All righty then. What's going on, Jack Windsor?
Bob France, it's good to see your beautiful face again, my friend.
Are you ready to
Happy
talk some
Thursday
smack?
evening.
Yeah,
Man, I was born ready
same
to
to you.
talk smack.
We've got a lot
I
of people that we're going to smack on today. I mean, seriously.
I hope so.
You first of all, welcome to episode. What is this? 8, 9? What number is this? Episode 9 of Talking
I
Smack
think
with Bob
this
and
is
Jack.
episode 9.
Episode
Episode 9.
9. Welcome to episode
Hey,
9.
Rachel.
Oh, look at that. Just jumping right in there. Hey, Rachel. Just wanted to point out a couple things. When we do Talking Smack twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, and it's going to be that way now until, I don't know, in perpetuity, we're trying to do two things. We're trying to go live with you and make this interactive so that you can ask questions, comments, whatever it is that we're talking about. You can even suggest things that you want us to talk about. So we're trying to do that. The other thing we're trying to do is let you know ahead of time so that if you don't see anything in the rundown that is really up your alley, let us know. So Jack just promoted about an hour or so ago saying, hey, reminding everybody we're on live at 7 o'clock and make sure you tune in, blah, blah, blah. And I just threw it on there what we're talking smack about. Because we try to do this with a little bit of planning. It's not always off the cuff. And we're talking smack about a number of things, not the least of which, Brittany Griner, which we'll get to in a second, Joe Blystone, Bob Paduchik, Scott Pullins, Sarah Chambers, a lot of mess in the state of Ohio. We're going to talk about an even bigger, different kind of a mess with a superintendent of one of the largest school districts in Ohio, essentially perving out and being supported by the school board and apparently some of the parents, despite his perving out with fantasies about children. It's a freak show, and we're going to hit that. Then we're also going to talk about a different city and state, Project Veritas, exposing more groomers in schools. And then Jack, I didn't even, when we made our plans here, I didn't know this was a story yet, but now I do, so we're going to talk about it too. It looks like the Senate vote today, 22-7, the Ohio Senate is going to change the way schools are run in the state of Ohio. I should say the Ohio General Assembly, that Senate Bill 178 is going to essentially create a governor-appointed board to make school district recommendations rather than the Ohio Board of Education. And that's a huge story, Jack, because we've been talking about who's on that board. We've been talking about the elections. We've been talking about Shea amendments, Title IX stuff going on. I mean, or Shea resolutions, rather. So that's just a little bit of what we got planned for tonight, and that's a new one that we didn't even talk about. We're going to have to hit that tonight, Jack. And I know you're up to date on all those things because you spend so much time in Columbus.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about 179. I've gone back and forth on it, so I can't wait to weigh in on that one.
Was I off by
And
a number? I said 178.
is
Am I off?
is it 178? You might be. No,
Yeah,
you
that's what
actually
the
may be
dispatch
right.
has. Dispatch is saying 178.
Well, dispatch is usually right.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, it looks like. Yeah, you may be right.
That's what they're calling it. It's okay. It doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. What it says is what really
It's
matters.
178.
178 it
178.
is. There you go.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just going to let you start on Brittany Griner because I've been on Brittany Griner and this entire affair all day long, almost all 3 hours of the radio show. Oh, and by the way, you see my new virtual background. I'm just going to start being a shameless and selfless, or not selfless, selfish self-promoter, letting everybody know how you can listen to my radio show. So there it is. It's AM 1420, The Answer in Cleveland. The show is always right radio, and yes, you can listen to it every day between 9 and noon at WHKradio.com. I'll probably have to add a couple more little graphics in the bottom corner so you can know the time and where you can find it online for people who aren't in the greater Cleveland area. So self-promotion aside, I spent almost 3 hours talking about this today. I spent a ton of time on social media, particularly on Twitter, talking about this today. So I don't want to say anything more until I hear your take. Jack Windsor, I have not heard a peep from you about Brittany
Yep.
Griner, the WNBA player, being brought home from Russia in exchange for a guy with the title or the nickname of the world's most what is it? World's deadliest man? What was the phrasing that they had for this
Yeah,
guy? No, I
Eric
remember.
Holder.
Merchant of Death. The
Merch-
Merchant of Death.
the
One of the
Merchant of
worst arms
Death.
dealers
That's right.
in the world. So, Jack, why don't you start it before I go crazy on it?
Yeah, so I'm going to start the way that I usually start, Bob, which is I'm going to give you a couple of different angles, which I think will probably infuriate you to the point that you get to jump in and rant a little bit. So I know that you always appreciate that.
I do.
WNBA star Brittany Griner was released Thursday from a Russian prison in a prisoner exchange, reportedly, and it involves a guy by the name of actually, I don't really give a rip about his name. His last name's Bout, and
Boot.
he is
Boot.
a
Boot.
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 Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. What are you talking about? Convicted Russian arms dealer, and so we swapped people, right? And here there are a couple of aspects to this story. Number one, Joe Biden said to the press, she lost months of her life. And there are several different angles to that. She did, and it's a shame. And she did it because she broke the law. And because of the negotiating ability and the emphasis and value that the United States and the Biden administration put on her life, then she is now a citizen, and she can, kneel at the national anthem and talk trash about America because she has that right, ironically. But, here's the other part. Correct me if I'm wrong. Paul Whelan is an ex-Marine who has been in prison for espionage since 2018, and there's been no action on that. She's lost months of her life, Joe Biden said. Well, so have many of the people who were involved in the January 6th incident who, they've been charged, but I'm pretty sure that the Sixth Amendment guarantees them a right to a speedy trial.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
Jack, I'm going to interrupt you only because your mic sounds like cereal. It's going snap, crackle, pop. You're just, and I don't know why, but it sounds broken and it's skipping. I don't know, Whitney, if you can verify that for me, unless it's just my earphones. If it's my earphones, then I'll apologize and you can continue. But I think it sounds really, really bad.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah. I don't know if that's better or not. Try it, Jack. Go ahead.
All right. So, as I was saying, we have January 6th detainees who are still imprisoned, and whether they're guilty or innocent, we don't know because we haven't honored the Constitution with respect to their cases. They're
Okay, we just have a bad connection is what it comes down to. Whitney is even saying it too, that it's just very hard to hear you for some reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you want to jiggle your mic cord or if you want to do something because it's really hard to hear you. And I want to hear you because I've already heard a few things from you that I want to yell at you about. So I want to hear you. I want you to be able to defend yourself before I start laying the smacketh down upon you. Like the Rudy Poo that you may be today. Yes, I just went Dwayne Johnson. While you fix that, let me try to fix something you just said. I think I heard you credit Joe Biden with his negotiating skills. Thanks to Joe Biden's negotiating skills, he was able to affect the release of Brittany Griner to the United States. And you talked about Victor Bout, the international arms dealer that was once described as one of the most dangerous men on the planet. Because he has been able to arm two different sides of two different conflicts and helping them to kill one another. He was given a 25-year prison sentence for conspiring to kill American citizens and providing aid to terrorists. Joe Biden sent that guy back to Vladimir Putin in Russia in exchange for an America-hating lesbian a WNBA basketball player who literally has expressed her disdain for this racist country. And you said that Joe Biden, through his negotiating skills, managed to get her home? Are you kidding? If this were the National Football League and Joe Biden was the GM who just pulled off that trade, dude is getting fired so fast his dentures would fall out. He didn't negotiate anything. He got played like a grand piano by Vladimir Putin, who managed to pull in a guy with international arms connections, unlike anybody else in the world, at a time when Vladimir Putin's country is what? At war and needs weapons. He just got a massive ally sent to Russia in exchange for a pothead lesbian basketball player.
Bob,
and the only reason
can
I'm
you hear
focusing...
me?
Yeah, I hear you. What do you got?
Okay, is it better? Is my
Sounds
mic
better.
better? It's
Yes, it
great,
sounds like it's
man. I
better.
just wind you up and I let you prove my point. That was beautiful.
Go for it. What do you got?
Well, that's exactly what happened. Is that you don't think Vladimir Putin knew what was on the table? You don't think that he understood what was at play when she was detained and she received a 9-year prison sentence? Of course he did. And when I talk about Joe Biden's negotiating skills, that's exactly what I'm talking about. He released a renowned arms dealer at a time when Russia needs him the most. And he got back somebody who probably doesn't appreciate, maybe she does now, I don't know, this country. Meanwhile, a Marine is still stranded and still imprisoned. So that's the entirety of my point. Joe Biden's negotiating skills, America's negotiating skills. Look, I know he's not popular right now, but man, I would have loved to have seen Donald J. Trump negotiate this deal because I guarantee you the end result would have been something of stark difference.
Well, I don't want to go there, and I'll tell you why. Because Paul Whelan, the U.S. Marine, who's been there and trapped in a 16-year prison sentence in Russia now for almost 5 years, Trump didn't get him out either. Not that there was the same situation with the Brittany Griner thing, but I know that because Trump worked very hard with North Korea and got Otto Warmbier and other students who were being held over there out. So he did a really good job at that. But if he made, and Mike Pompeo, who was the Secretary of State at the time, if he made overtures to Vladimir Putin to try to get Paul Whelan out, which he should be because he's been convicted on no evidence whatsoever. The U.S. government has declared that Paul Whelan is being illegally held, convicted of espionage with, like I said, no evidence whatsoever. But if they made any overtures to try to get him out, they were unsuccessful because he was there for about the last 2 years of the Trump regime or the Trump administration as well, and he didn't get out. But that's not the point here. That's a part of the point. The fact that Biden got Vladimir Putin to say, okay, let's make a deal here. And the only thing that Vladimir Putin had to give back to the United States was the America hating basketball player and not the U.S. Marine in exchange for somebody. If Biden had any poker face whatsoever, if Biden had any ability to navigate and negotiate and manage people, he would have said, Vladimir, how important Victor Bout is. You know what he is being held for, and you know what he could do for you. You want him? You can have him. You give me Paul Whelan back here right now and throw in Brittany Griner as a side piece. Not as the main, not as the main pot, if you will, in this poker game. That's just an add-on. That's just an extra couple of chips there. The real deal is you get that Marine that you're holding illegal out of there, and we'll give you back your international arms dealer and nothing less. But Jack, he got played. Like I said, Vladimir Putin made Joe Biden his bitch at the negotiation table here. And speaking of bitches, you know what? I'm sorry. That's what she was when she was here. When she was playing for the Phoenix Mercury, she made a declaration. She will not just kneel. She didn't kneel, Jack. She won't come out of the tunnel. She said, I will not be in the arena when the national anthem is played because the national anthem shouldn't be played because it's a vestige of a time in which blacks didn't have rights and this repressive, oppressive, racist country, irredeemably racist country shouldn't be forcing that anthem on us when we're trying to play our basketball game. So you ask me, look, she went to a bad place, an authoritarian place. She broke their laws, and guess what? She found out. Unlike the United States, Russia enforces their drug laws. They don't play games. They take it very, very seriously. You get caught with weed there, you're going to do some time. And if she was going to get out, she needed to be the throw-in. The real deal needed to be Paul Whelan for Victor Bout.
Yeah, well said. Apparently Baylor doesn't teach American history, or they don't teach it very well. But I'm going to go back to the whole January 6th thing. The big hang up for me, Bob, and I'm going to hang my hat on this, is Joe Biden saying she's lost months of her life. Okay, she has. And according to the law, rightfully so. Now she's back home. There are people still in prison cells who were allegedly involved in some sort of violation of law from January 6th. I say allegedly because what is today? Today is December 8th, 2022, and they've still not received a trial. So I don't want to hear Joe biding his time until he can think of the next line talk to me about somebody losing months of their lives. I don't want to see come all the way to Washington, D.C. Harris cackling and smiling like a damn mule while we still have a Marine rotting in a prison cell. So, look, I'm not happy about this. The father in me, though, says, Brittany Griner is somebody's daughter. Maybe she deserves a second chance. We'll see.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt.
It'll come out in the wash really soon.
Yeah.
She isn't. But you know what, Bob? She's an American. The great thing about this country is that you can be dumb, you can be ignorant, you can be disrespectful, and you still have protection. Well, unless you're a conservative, right?
Okay. Okay, I'm going to hit two quick things in response while you fix your mic again, because you're doing it all over again. It's still that bad connection, crackle, whatever you want to call it, is still happening. So let's see if you can fix that. I want to hit two things in response to your point about January 6th is exactly right. What about all those people who have been denied their right to a speedy trial? It's a constitutional right to due process and a speedy trial. And January 6, 2021 was almost 2 full years ago, and there are still people sitting in isolation in these gulags, in these American gulags in D.C., if you will. So you're right. If Biden wants to, be concerned about people losing months of their lives, how about taking a look at the January 6 prisoners? I completely concur. Second thing I want to do, and this nobody brought it up yet, but I read an article, reread an article from, I don't know, it was like April or something like that of this year, not too long after Brittany Griner got arrested and then had her trial and was convicted and sentenced to 9 years. And there was an article in, I want to say USA Today, and I read it earlier today, and I'm not going to quote it because it wasn't good enough to quote, but here was the gist. The gist was, Brittany Griner never should have had to go to Russia. And if it wasn't for the unfair, illegal wage gap, the gender pay gap among basketball players in the United States, she wouldn't have had to be there in the first place. She needed to go to Russia to supplement her income because she doesn't make what LeBron James makes in the NBA.
She's a millionaire.
All these women doing the same sport that the men play, are making a fraction of what the men make, and that's why they have to go to Russia or to Europe to supplement their income and play in another league after their WNBA season is over. And I read that article, and I was so disgusted. We had a similar conversation, you and I, Jack, on Talkin' Smack about the soccer teams and about the women's soccer players taking half of the men's earnings because, we all play the same thing, so we should get the same amount. And it's just crap. The WNBA would not exist if it weren't for the NBA subsidizing it. It makes $0. In fact, it loses dollars virtually every single year. And Brittany Griner happens to be one of the highest paid players in the WNBA. She makes $230,000 a year. Now, Jack, I don't know how much you make, but I know how much I make, and it's no $230,000 a year. And if I was only making $230,000, I wouldn't be going to a place like Russia so that I could make more and more to try to compete with the guys, or somebody else in my field. I'm sorry. If you can't live on $230K that you feel like you've got to go and make another $200,000 a year playing in Russia, and you're not going to familiarize yourself with Russia's laws, I have no sympathy for you. You get paid what you earn. You get paid what revenue you generate. Your league generates nothing. Everything you get paid is a bonus. It's free money because you're not generating any revenue. And if you feel like you've got to go to earn more someplace else and get mad because the NBA is not paying you even more than they are, go to hell. And you know what? Like I said, I'll tell you this, Jack. Last thing I'll say: if she goes back into the WNBA, which I assume she will. If she is not standing on that sideline at full attention, shoulders back, hand on heart, singing the anthem along with the actual performer, ship her ass back to Moscow. She doesn't deserve to be here. That's my last thought.
Yeah, giving new meaning to the term Moscow Mule, right?
That's
Look,
well done. Well played.
I can't say it. I can't say it any better than you just said it, Bob. The interesting part to me, let's talk about salary disparity. By the way, is this a little better? Can you hear me okay?
Sounds okay now.
Okay, I'm a little pissed off because, man, I had a lot of good stuff to say.
I'm
It's
pissed
like,
off too because now that we got yours fixed, it makes my head echo in my own earphones. So you've totally jacked both of us up here. So congratulations.
we're all
Go ahead.
jacked up. So, here's the fun thing, right? I love how the press covers this. I love how the press extends the narrative. Actually, they probably help create it and then they extend it. My question, and this would end it all, is let's talk about these big news outlets. Now, obviously, CNN has lost a ton of money, MSNBC, but these news organizations are owned by a handful of people. So put your money where your mouth is. You know what? Whatever you make, go ahead and give the Ohio Press Network, based on the population that we cover, the proportionate amount of income for the state of Ohio based on your national revenue model. You know what they would do? They'd never do it because they would say, well, you haven't earned it. And then I would turn around and say, interesting point that you make there. I mean, it's crazy. A lot of the concepts that the left talks about, a lot of the concepts that the Mockingbird media perpetuates, they're not even willing to walk out of the parking lot and practice. It's absolutely asinine. It's absolutely insane. And, look, at the end of the day, you can hate capitalism, you can hate free markets, and usually the people who hate free markets are the people who got a little bit of success and now they just want to dominate, or the people who don't have anything. The reality is you can move to a socialism model, you can move to a communist model, but the free money eventually runs out, and so does the ceiling. So does the opportunity to have an unlimited income, unlimited opportunity, and in some instances to even be able to choose what you do for a vocation. We live in this country where people say nowadays, I want to follow my passion. I want to do. Good luck with that. Good luck with that in communism. Good luck with that in socialism. Because at the end of the day, everybody's going to be leveled out. That's really good for the people who underperform. It's not really good for the people who bust their asses and produce.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Yeah, I see some of the comments here. People are saying that I'm echoing. I'm not echoing only in my own ear. I'm echoing to everybody else too. I don't know what the audio issue is here. Jack is snap, crackling, and popping, and now that that's fixed, I'm echoing. So I don't know. Whitney's going to kind of tinker with the knobs and see what happens with it, and we'll hopefully make that fixed. The good news is the things that I say are really, really important, and hearing them twice is actually a good thing. So the echo might, that's probably why I'm echoing. So if you get to hear it once, that's great. Twice is just beautiful.
Does that help at all? Is that a little better, everybody?
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Now I'm still echoing.
Okay.
All right. Jack, I'll shut up so I don't echo for a little while here because I want you to set the table for us on this next one as well. There's some drama going on. You have at the Ohio Press Network covered in great detail the Joe Blystone saga since his gubernatorial primary run, his loss in the primary, some of the shots he's taken at you after the primary. He hates you. He goes online and comes after you because you report the truth about what's going on with his campaign, which was an absolute cluster blank. And I know we're online and I could say what the cluster was, but I'm trying to keep it somewhat PG. His entire campaign was a cluster blank. All
Bob,
kinds of
you could
campaign law
dance. You
violations.
could dance in a banana hammock, and it would still be family friendly, according to the left. Sorry,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
digress. Go ahead.
That's true. But I want to do this. I want to do this according to the right. I believe in. I believe in some sort of morality code here. We're going to try to stand by it. But anyway, Jack, you get the point. His campaign filled with all kinds of campaign finance violations. His one of his volunteer co-campaign managers, Sarah Chambers, was working so hard to try to help him. Then, once she realized that what he was doing is essentially illegal, she bailed. Then filed a lawsuit against him. So he's been facing a lot of serious potential sanctions, criminal sanctions, not to mention a smackdown from the Ohio Elections Commission. So there was a hearing today, and why don't you educate us all? Lay it on the line. What exactly what was supposed to happen today and what went down?
Yeah, so the Ohio Election Commission was scheduled to meet today, and they were supposed to conduct a full hearing on several complaints. There are four total. I think one came from Mary Capella, who is a citizen around the Cincinnati area. Another one came from a former campaign co-manager, Sarah Chambers. Actually, Capella had two. Chambers had one. And then Secretary of State Frank LaRose, as you remember, turned evidence over and a letter over in September alleging that there were 13 Ohio election law violations. So the Ohio Election Commission today was supposed to have a full hearing and do those things and pick a next direction. I got notice last night that the executive director and staff attorney of the Ohio Election Commission, his name's Philip Richter, sent an email to legal counsel for all the complainants that I just mentioned, Capella, Chambers, Secretary of State LaRose, and said, we're not going to have a full hearing tomorrow. I've been in negotiation discussions with Joe Blystone's attorney, Josh Brown, and I think that we almost have something over the finish line. So we're going to meet tomorrow, but we're not going to call witnesses. We're not going to consider evidence, and we'll go from there. So I made several phone calls last night, and what I was able to uncover is that Richter met with Blystone's attorney. Now, the Ohio Election Commission is an administrative court, if you will, not a traditional court of law. But there are some fundamental practices in the legal community. And one of them is if you're going to enter into negotiation discussions, usually you have legal representation from all the parties involved. That wasn't the case. So fast forward to today. I'm tuning in and I see Philip Richter leading the discussion. And essentially what Philip Richter says is, look, I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue these negotiation discussions, and we are going to kick the ball. What do you want me to do with these? We are going to kick the ball.
We're doing everything we can to try to fix this audio thing. Jack is glitchy.
Okay,
and I'm
can you
echoey.
hear me?
I hear you just fine, Jack. Go ahead, bud.
Oh, Land O'Lakes, this is fantastic. Okay, so essentially what Philip Richter says is we are going to continue with a date uncertain, which means we don't know when the next scheduled action is going to be on this. But in the meantime and in the background, we are going to consider negotiations. And it appears that Otto Beatty, who is, I believe, chairman of the Ohio Elections Commission, really tried to be, I'm giving you my opinion, really tried to be Richter's wingman today and fielded some questions, asked some questions, and positioned some statements in a way that really tried to convince, cajole, influence the Ohio Elections Commission to say, you know what, we'll pump the brakes on this, all four complaints, and we'll just entrust you, Mr. Richter, to negotiate on behalf of the commission. Which, by the way, isn't that really interesting? The Ohio Elections Commission, you have one person negotiating on behalf of the complainants and behalf of the entire commission. That was really strange to me. But that didn't go over well. The commission said today, no, I don't think that that's what we're going to do. In fact, there was one commissioner who said, I think what we really need to do is understand what are the elements of the negotiation. Well, that was not disclosed. And then it was, okay, look, if we don't know what the elements of the negotiation are, then I think what we really need to do is we need to consider all of the evidence before we can even decide whether we want to allow you to continue to negotiate, whether we want to implement a fine or some sort of punishment. The other option, which is what Secretary of State Frank LaRose's office has already asked, is that all of this would be kicked over to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for criminal prosecution. Now, I've done some research, I've made some phone calls, and here's what I've been able to come up with. Well, first of all, let me just say this. The result of today's meeting was they're going to meet on January 5th, and the idea is they're going to carve out the Ohio Election Commission, that is. They're going to carve out January 5th and January 6th as 2 consecutive days during which they're going to hear evidence, and that Joe Blystone and his team are going to be able to respond to that evidence. But let me just remind everybody, I don't know if you've
But just to be clear, before they go responding to any evidence on January 5th and 6th, they were prepared today to plead guilty. To plead guilty to everything in exchange for just like a $30,000 fine and a lighter, reprimand or whatever the case might be. And I think 4 or 5 years he wouldn't be allowed to run for office, all that stuff. He was ready to plead guilty. At least that's the way it was presented by a conservative PAC. And when I talked to Scott Pullins, the attorney for Sarah Chambers, about that today, that's what he said. So,
well, that's kind of the shiz of it, right? Is that we don't know, and this is a public matter before a public body, and we don't know that. What I've been able to determine is that, remember in September, Brian Katz, who is the attorney from Frank LaRosa's office, wrote a letter to the Blystone campaign, and he said, hey, the party stops here, and there are some things that you're going to have to do, or we're going to recommend that you get referred for prosecution. One of those things is that you're going to have to acknowledge that you intentionally failed to track and report contributions. Now, in a deposition that Joe Blystone gave in another matter in Delaware County involving his former campaign co-manager in a defamation suit there that he withdrew, but his campaign co-manager did not withdraw. She actually countersued for abuse of process and forced him to sit for a deposition. We learned in that deposition that he admitted to some facts, and some of those facts, it appears, based on my reading, I'm not an attorney, but that he did intentionally fail to track and report contributions. So that part of it has been done.
Intentionally, the key word there. This is not just some bookkeeping error. This was intentional because they were told many times by people like Sarah, you have to track this. You can't give more than $100 in cash. No matter how much it is, it's got to be tracked. Here's $300 being coming in. Who'd that come from? I don't know. Just put it in the pile. All of that stuff was done intentionally, and that, of course, is and this is a guy who wanted to run a how many $1 billion is the state budget? Usually,
I want to say
on an annual
it's
basis.
like
20-something billion.
I'm embarrassed. Wasn't it like 46 and then it went to 70 something?
Oh, geez.
I can't remember.
That's worse than I thought.
It's crazy.
But he wanted to run a multi-billion-dollar state budget, and he couldn't handle a few $100,000 in campaign contributions and keep the record straight, or didn't want to. So go ahead.
No, touche. And so, one of the things, and I say all of that because one of the things that Katz laid out in that letter was, you have to admit that you did it, and you did it intentionally. And then you have to hand over any remaining campaign funds, net of debts that you owe, right, that you have to pay all of your legal obligations. But anything net of that, you need to turn over to the Ohio Election Commission. Essentially, it's a fine. And then you have to agree that you're not going to seek public office for 4 to 5 years. My understanding is, after doing some research, is that that's kind of the element of this negotiation, is that if Joe Blystone would agree that he acknowledges, hey, I did this, didn't track these things, didn't report accurately, and you know what? I did it intentionally. I'm going to give all the balance of my campaign. And at one point, that was $150,000. By the way, we've been on this track for over a year, which is really interesting. Yeah. I mean, they still have not had a full hearing on all the matters a year in. But
okay. Let me jump in and read some of the comments from some of the viewers and listeners, because you need to stand on one leg or something and put your arms in the air and do something to get better reception for where you are for your microphone, because we're back to the snap, crackle, pop thing again. Don't know why, but it is what it is. Wendy says, prosecute him. He's the reason we have DeWine again. Such a fraud. Totally agree. And now that we're fixing you, I'm echoing again. I love technology. Stephanie says they subpoenaed Sarah Chambers to be at the hearing today as well. She should be there. Good. And I hope she testifies, and hope she nails him to the wall.
It was a false subpoena, by the way. My understanding is that the subpoena was a false subpoena. It was not done the right way, and so that it was not honored. So she did not. She was there, but legally did not have to appear.
Okay, good. Okay. This is what Shauna says. Sarah didn't have to. I'm sorry, let me read that again. Sarah didn't leave due to finance issues. She did fight to get him to hire a professional campaign finance person. Sarah also never brought a lawsuit against Blystone. Then here we go with the echoing again. Going back to Griner. Okay, we're going to pass
real quick. By the way, I want to
forward.
clarify. I never said that Sarah Chambers brought a lawsuit against Joe Blystone. I said Joe Blystone filed a defamation lawsuit in Delaware County, and Sarah Chambers countersued in that suit and is now pursuing abusive process, which would allow her to
I
recoup
said
legal
that,
fees.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
She was referring, I said that she filed a lawsuit, but you clarified it just now. She filed a countersuit and then filed the abusive process thing. So that's, yes, I want to be clear about that too. So I'm glad we got that. All right, 26 minutes left in this episode, so let's move on to one of our other Ohio topics. Jack, this one is just about as repugnant gets. We talk and have talked on my radio show, and then you and I on my radio show, as well as here on Talkin' Smack, about groomers. I don't care what anybody says about them. I know that is considered to be taboo in the social media world. You can get censored, you can get fined, you can get not fined, you can get shadow banned and everything else for calling groomers because it's apparently a slur at the LGBTQ community. I should make this very, very clear. If you are in the LGBTQ community and the things that you do involve adults and adults only, then we're not talking about you. There is no slur against you. We're only talking about those that try to groom children to bring them into this lifestyle, to overtly sexualize them at very young ages in order to get them to say, I want to be like that too. That's grooming, and that's real, and here is one of the most grotesque examples of it in our schools. Lakota Public Schools, one of the largest school districts in the state of Ohio. Parents in Lakota, now I'm quoting an article that was written back on Monday by Libs of TikTok. Parents in Lakota are demanding that the superintendent there resign after his highly compromised sexual history and statements regarding sexual fantasies, wait for it, with children have come to light. Miller is the head of the second largest district in Southwest Ohio. He on August 8th of this year, I should say, Vanessa Wells, a Lakota parent, filed a police report against him with the sheriff's office. In that complaint, Wells provided police with numerous text messages. So, in other words, we've got receipts. This isn't hearsay. This isn't I heard him say, because anybody can say anything about anyone in that regard. That's why hearsay is never admissible. But text messages, digital receipts, including messages between Miller and his ex-wife, which show Miller seeming to admit to fantasizing about raping minors. At this point, I'd like to remind you, this is the superintendent of schools. 2 days later, during an interview,
largest school district in Ohio, by the way. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we're talking about a lot of kids that would be affected here. 2 days later, in an interview with detectives, Miller's ex-wife said that her ex-husband used to traffic her two other men through Craigslist posts, which are also available. Those digital receipts are there, in which he tried to hire men or to try to find men to come and have sex with his wife. He then sent her, according to the ex-wife, child pornography through email and text and asked her to molest children in the school district, including, and I apologize for the graphic nature of this, I'm not making it up, her own son. At one point, he had asked me, I have a friend who has 3 little boys, and said I should volunteer to watch the boys so the parents could go out, then give them sleeping pills, molest them for him, and videotape it. Then not more than a couple weeks later, my son had his friends over. They were spending the night. They were downstairs. My husband wanted me to go down there, have sex with our son and his friends. When detectives interviewed Matt Miller, the superintendent, about this, Jack, he did not deny the allegations. Instead, he passed the blame. And again, this is all in digital receipts. He passed the blame to his ex-wife. The report states that Miller said he and his ex-wife would role play and engage in pillow talk like that, which on at least one occasion included pillow talk, discussions of drugging, molesting, and recording 3 kids. The detective asked him if he read the script involving the 3 boys, to which Miller responded, yeah. And that involved those 3 kids, so that is where that came from. So I'm going to stop with the grotesque nature. I think we all know what we're talking about here. We're talking about a pedophile who may be guilty of trafficking in child pornography, but who at least fantasizes about having sex with and molesting and drugging, so that it's not even, you can't even use the words consensual sex when you're talking about kids. They're not of age to give consent.
But
rape. We're talking about
rape.
Thank you. Right. Drugging and raping them. Okay, let's just call it what it is. Anyway, Jack, bottom line is the board eventually hired a law firm to investigate Miller. The independent investigation, according to the board of Lakota schools, quote, found no proof of wrongdoing. And so he remains on the job, superintendent of thousands and thousands of kids right now while fantasizing about drugging and raping them. But we're not supposed to talk about groomers in public schools. We're not supposed to talk about people who literally are trying to overtly sexualize children, perhaps with the intention of literally having sex with or attacking, sexually assaulting said children. I'll stop now.
Yeah, so here's the deal, right? I'm going to say the other unpopular thing. Here's what repeatedly happens, right? Because we're going to talk about another example later, and I'm going to hit you with one that just came out a couple of hours ago. And Bob, I don't even think we had a chance to discuss it. But what ends up happening is either a teacher, a superintendent, a school official, or a school, they get caught for some sort of unfathomable thing. And by the way, if this isn't unfathomable and disturbing to you, then we can't be friends, because I just don't get it. It makes me so pissed off I can barely see straight. But what ends up happening is they blame some sort of far right source or outlet. I'm sure Libs of TikTok is, looked upon as some marginalized far right outlier organization that's hell bent on coming against people who are inclusive and just want to have empathy in our schools, okay, and all the other bullshit.
Libs of TikTok is run by one woman, and all she does is she protects kids. That's it. That's all she's doing is exposing people who harm children. That's it.
But Bob, here's the problem. You're preaching to the choir. I get it. You get it. But I'm talking about the rest of the world. So somebody gets caught, school gets caught, and then they go, oh, it's a far right conspiracy. They're trying to call us groomers. Look at this outlet. All they do is come against the LGBTQ movement. All they do is come against inclusivity and in all the alphabet, you name it, all of it. And then what happens? Mainstream supports it. Mainstream media talks about it as if it's some outlet or some lunatic or fringe parents. What did Fat Andy in Columbus, Fat Andy Ginther, what did he call parents who had a hard time with half-naked adults shaking their asses in front of minors? He called them extremists. That's what happens. And so, everybody gets on that bandwagon and the story disappears. This story hasn't disappeared. It's been around for a while. What I want to know, and I need to look into this, and I think I would encourage our viewers and our listeners to look into this. What's the plan in Lakota? What's the policy on things like transgender discussions? What's the policy on kids being able to express themselves sexually? Start there. See what's going on there. But Bob, I'm so sick and tired. I heard this many times over the past week. Look, and by the way, I agree. If somebody's gay or they're in the LGBTQ movement, I'll point to the mother in California who wrote one of the best pieces we've had on our news site this year. She's pro same-sex marriage. She is in the LGBTQ community, and she says what is going on in schools, however, is absolutely disturbing and disgusting, and it doesn't support it. So I'm not calling the LGBTQ movement, I'm not calling everybody groomers, but there are opportunities present for people who are hell-bent on having those inappropriate and disgusting relationships. But what I get tired of is people saying, sorry, real quick, I get tired of people saying, well, we're not groomers. These things aren't happening. So I'm going to go to this, right? By the way, where's Lakota? Is it in Butler County? Is it Butler County, Ohio? I think it is, right?
I'm not 100%.
So this story broke 2 hours ago. A former student in the Lakota school district turned herself in and appeared in court Thursday, innocent until proven guilty, right? But it appears this former student teacher had a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old boy she met while student teaching at Liberty Junior School. And those two started their relationship by exchanging, what do you call them, snaps on Snapchat. So look, I don't want to hear that teachers are not people who pose a risk to kids. It's bullshit. It literally just happened in Lakota. Sorry for the foul language. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I want to point something out. You started to say there about that the California woman. There's an entire organization of gay people called Gays Against Groomers that
Yep.
I have my utmost respect. They're literally they know that the type of lifestyle they lead when it comes to their sexualization or their sex lives, it needs to be kept in the adult sphere.
Right.
They believe drag shows are 18 and over. They believe that any of the clubs that they might visit, again, this should be 18 and over. Taking anything that they do with their lifestyle and trying to bring it into schools or libraries to introduce to children introduces children to sex, period. First off, when they have no business being introduced to it at that age. And then secondly, and most importantly, it's introducing them to deviant sex or queer sex, if you will, which I don't care what you want to call it. It's not normal sexual behavior. Normal sexual behavior, normal meaning that which the vast majority of a species or a population engages in, is male and female sexual procreation. That's the way it works. Males get with females, they procreate. That's how they propagate the species. So just to be very clear about that, when I say abnormal, that's not a slur.
Nope.
It is intended to be simply just what the overall overwhelming majority of all species are, is heterosexual. So if you are not, you are then pushing something that is quote unquote abnormal just by numbers, not by a slur, abnormal or deviant from the norm. It deviates from the norm. So you're bringing kids in, or you're bringing these people in, and you're sexualizing these kids and then teaching them about queer sex at the same time, which has absolutely no place whatsoever in these schools. So the Gays Against Groomers organization, they know it, and they are angry because they're the ones who get lumped in. And I want to make sure that I'm lumping them out right now. Gays who are, particularly adult gay people who know that they want to go to strip shows, drag shows, or whatever, and who say we want to keep that in the adult realm, thank you. Because you know what? It's a free country. You do you, I'll do me. We'll all be happy. You go and live your life. Do your thing. Don't bring it into the kids. And thank you for telling the other people in your alphabet community, because I don't even know how far that list goes now, that LGBTQ, they put a plus there because they just can't continue listing, and it's like pi 3.14 blah blah. You can't go
Wow,
forever
there's
on
92
that.
different genders. So I mean,
Yeah, right.
What's the mathematical combination on that? It's
Yeah.
beyond.
So thank you to that population, but to the situation in Lakota, I just have to say this. You asked it, Jack. What is the plan? What are you going to do from this point forward? Your superintendent is on public social media sites like Craigslist soliciting sex from other men with his wife, and then sending text messages, which can be captured and screenshotted, which they are, talking about wanting to drug and rape and record the rape of little kids. And
So
the Lakota school board says, well, the investigation found he did nothing wrong. Number one, just because he hasn't raped a kid yet, I don't think that fantasizing and expressing intent is doing nothing wrong. Jack, don't schools generally have morality clauses for their teachers that say you might not have to commit the rape, but if you express a desire to commit rape of kids, our morality clause says you can't be around kids? I mean, am I crazy for thinking something like that?
no, you're not crazy. I'm going to bring up three real quick points. Number one, I'm back. I'm a connector. I connect ideas because fundamentally we're either consistent or we're inconsistent, right? And so I want to go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the hour with Brittany Griner and this boot guy from Russia who was, do you know what he was accused of? Do you know what he was tried for and accused of? Conspiracy.
Yeah, conspiring to kill Americans. Conspiring to kill Americans. Yep.
Conspiring. So how is it that you can conspire in one area, but you can't conspire in another area, particularly as it relates to our most vulnerable children? I have a hard time with that. How is this not illegal? But I digress. I'm sure that there's a legal code. I'm sure that there's legal precedent. But let's also look back, I don't know, maybe it's been a decade ago, back when I used to watch a lot more TV. I think there was a series called To Catch a Predator. Do you remember that, Bob?
Yeah, oh sure, of course.
Okay, those guys didn't sleep with kids. They didn't molest kids. They expressed things over messaging, probably text messaging, and they showed up somewhere. So interesting, right? Like, where's the line? I don't know. But all of that to say, even if that applies here, there is a standard of ethics. There is a standard of morality that the state of Ohio has implemented and that should be followed. And we talked about this on the air the other day. I think that's going to be the net that catches this guy. And I would expect that at some point in the very near future, he's going to come before either the State Board of Education or somebody, and there's going to be action. I can't believe that there won't be.
Well, here's the last thing I'll say about this. Part of the story that was reported that I read to you indicated from the ex-wife that he sent her, in addition to the requests to commit these sexual assaults of these kids, she says that he sent her on email and text child pornography. If that part has been screen captured, now we have a clear violation of federal law. Using electronic devices to disseminate, share, spread, traffic in child pornography is a federal crime. It's a felony, and it's punishable by a whole lot of years of very uncomfortable experiences in a federal freaking prison with a whole bunch of men who might feel like treating you like you wanted to treat those little kids. That is something, now I hope to God, and I will literally say a prayer because predators like this need to be brought to justice and removed from general society. I pray to you, God, that those images, if they exist, they still exist on the wife's email and text messages and can be turned over to law enforcement. Because the one thing that the Lakota School Board cannot say when they say, we found no wrongdoing, is that he had child pornography on his phone that he texted to his wife. You can't say that he did nothing wrong. That's a felony, and I hope he goes to prison for the rest of his life for it. Because I'll be honest with you, Jack, child pornographers are child rapists. They literally facilitate the rape of children by adults, or they force children to engage in sexual activity with one another, which is essentially double rape. You're forcing them to rape one another against each other's will. That to me is every bit as actionable for a death penalty as murder, in my opinion. They are literally, anybody who would do that is the lowest form of life on this planet. And I wish they all got the death penalty.
Well,
so
Bob, look,
if this guy, Matt Miller, is engaging just in that part, forget about his fantasies, but if he shared child pornography with his ex-wife and it can be proven, that ought to be enough to bury him under a federal prison. Go ahead.
well, look, so a couple of things. If that imagery is available and it has not been prosecuted, we have bigger problems in Butler County.
Well said. Well said.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, even if there are not images, thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions, lead to results. If this guy hasn't done anything yet, I'm not saying that he will, but I'm saying indulging in those thoughts and in those fantasies and acting out to the level of pillow talk, verbally discussing those things, acting them out in role play, how much closer to the line do you need to get? Okay, so if you don't want to arrest him, then get him help. Get him out of that position and get him the fuck away from kids. Pardon my language.
Yeah, I'll try to avoid that language, but I share the feeling. I share the feeling that
It infuriates me, Bob.
I know.
It infuriates me that we would enable a person to be around the most vulnerable people in our population. That, you know, when my daughter goes to school every day, and I'm sure that when your kids went to school in elementary, middle, and high school, you just had this. I don't know. If I didn't think that my kid wasn't going to be safe, I don't know how I would sleep at night. I don't know how I would function every day. I don't want to send my kid to a place that is led by predators. I just don't want to do it. Or by people who have a penchant or a desire to do things that, frankly, I'm going to stop there.
Well, Jack, you know, it's interesting that you say that because let's up the ante here for a minute. We've got about 6-7 minutes left in this episode of Talkin' Smack. What you just said plus the added bonus of having to pay $40,000 a year for it. Because that's our last story here we're going to hit. Chicago, Illinois, a very exclusive and elite private school called Francis W. Parker School in Chicago, Illinois. The dean of students there is a freak by the name of Joseph Bruno. Why am I calling him a freak? I'm calling him a freak because he is a freak and he is a threat to kids, and Project Veritas exposed him. Now, I can't play the audio video for you in this format for whatever reason, so I'm going to just try to give you a little bit of what he said in the hidden audio recording video or interview or conversation with a Project Veritas investigative reporter. He was bragging about in his school his ability as the dean to do whatever he wants. He talked about how he literally has, in his $40,000 a year school, the freedom and the money to do whatever he wants without anybody questioning it. So he said what he did was he asked the LGBTQ health center. Apparently at his school, they have an LGBTQ health center to come and drop some health on the kids in the high school who are age 14 to 18. And what he said is that the LGBTQ health center, quote, they're just like passing, I apologize, by the way, these words are not profane words, but they are vulgar words. Quote, this is on tape. They're just like passing around dildos and butt plugs, and the kids are playing with them. And they're talking about things like lube versus spit, and which one works better. The kids are like, how does this butt plug work? How does this work? That's like a really cool part of my job. These are direct quotes. This is on tape. If I could play the audio for you, I would, so I wouldn't have to repeat these words myself. These are things that he said. This is a really cool part of my job. He went on to say, I've been the dean for 4 years. During Pride, we do a Pride Week every year, he said, and that's when he made the comments about what he has this LGBTQ health center come in. So they're passing around the butt plugs and the dildos and talking about queer sex, using lube versus using spit. This is an LGBTQ health center, mind you, and I apologize because I'm trying to scroll through the screen, the subtitles, because I can't play the audio for you. The reporter from Project Veritas says, where did this happen? And he said, right there in the classroom. They're just looking at them in the classroom while I'm sitting there with them. And then we had a drag queen come in. And the drag queen came in and passed out cookies and brownies and did photos with them. That is so amazing, said the Project Veritas journalist playing the role. And everybody's cool with this? The butt plugs and the dildos? And no big complaints? And the dean says, no, it's queer sex. The drag queen coming in, what's her name? Her name is Alexis Bevels, and she just hung out in my classroom or hung out in my office. You have so much freedom, said the Project Veritas reporter, so much wiggle room. He said so much freedom and so much money to do stuff. The trustees are okay with that too? They don't know? The reporter asked. The dean of students said, well, it's like, I wouldn't even run it by them. Like, why would I run it by them? But if I did, they would say, that's wonderful. How old are the kids in these classes? 14 to 18. So I'll stop there to let you marinate in that filth and ask you, Jack, if merging queer sex toys and discussions of how they're used with drag queens coming in and passing out cookie and brownies like having a party might be considered grooming young underage kids to want to participate in and embrace a lifestyle of queer sex. Does this pass the grooming definition, do you think, Jack?
I'm just going to drop F-bombs, Bob. I don't even know what to say to that. Yeah, I think it totally does. But, I think the disturbing thing that you said, if I were to extrapolate what the gentleman busted for being a purveyor of just disgusting things to kids 14 to 18 years old said, he's like, oh, no, queer sex, we're good. That's like an umbrella, right? Like if it's under the umbrella of queer sex, man, there are no rules, there are no lines. We can violate everything. And by the way, we have this little protection clause. If we do it under the guise of education, then we're scot-free. Man, oh Manischewitz, we need to change that. We need to change it right away. Shauna Sundberg, I'm gonna read what she just said. It's the absolute best thing I've read, and I know that people are gonna, oh, that's not possible. Yeah, it actually is. If we can ask police officers to wear cameras, Shauna Sundberg says any adult in a position of power over children that are not their own should have to start wearing cameras. Hear, hear.
Yeah. And Jack, just to give you the update on that story, which literally broke from Project Veritas last night, Wednesday night, as of this morning, Thursday morning, there was a response from this elite, expensive $40,000 a year school's board of trustees.
Who wants to guess what that response was?
Did they condemn the approved remarks of the dean of students for the vulgarity and the actions taken with these children who are underage? No. They issued a statement condemning Project Veritas as a far-right extremist group trying to expose and trying to do harm to the LGBTQ community and their school. They said they stand behind the dean of students at this school, John Bruno. Was it Bruno? John Bruno, I think was his name. So if you weren't going to drop F-bombs before, I'm sorry, Joseph Bruno, not John Bruno, Joseph Bruno, the dean of students at Francis W. Parker Schools in a school in Chicago, Illinois. So I would imagine Project Veritas is going to follow up on this. And I'm sad to say that we're going to follow up on it too, because we have to. Because if you turn your head away from this, you allow it to not only continue where it is, but you allow it to spread to more and more places. The more, what is the old saying? And I hate cliches. I try not to do cliche radio. I don't want to do cliche podcasts with you, Jack. But what is the old cliche about the only thing that is needed for evil to take root is for good men to do nothing? Something in that vein. If good men do not stand up and do something, that's when evil takes root. So, and I'm not suggesting we drive to Chicago and physically do something, but we need to expose this. We need to expose it and generate public outrage against it. And we need to continue to call out groomers for what they are. And we need to continue to protect our children, whether they're in public schools. And now this is a private school. That's not the answer, yanking your kid out of your local public school like Lakota, where Matt Miller is the superintendent, but then putting him into a private school where you don't know what the hell's going on there either. But it could be going on anywhere. It could be going on everywhere. And I think this is where we have to stand up and do whatever we can.
Yeah, and I think, the number one thing is you don't have to get upset and swear like me. I do apologize for that. This is one of those things that just gets me, and I just have no appetite for it. But we can't be apathetic. That's what happens. And this thing has a long tail because it was a slow fade, right? And so I think the one blessing from 2020, I've said this, is that we got perfect vision about what was going on in our schools, about what was going on with our elected officials. I'm the number one culprit. I was active in politics. I was active in public discourse and current events out of college. And, I saw the dark, disgusting underbelly of politics through work with some campaigns, and really just distanced myself from it. And it just trusted that if somebody had an R behind their name or a D behind their name, that I could probably guess what they were going to do and how they were going to act. And, smooth sailing for 2 or 3 decades. Well, we can't do that anymore. Not only do we have to pay attention to the people we elect as governor, as state senator, as state representative, but more so as school board member, as superintendent. What is that person? What are they doing? We really have to look under every rock right now because this is our world is so infested. We have to wake up. We can no longer be apathetic.
Amen. Exactly right. All right, that's going to do it for this episode 9 of Talkin' Smack. And Jack, don't worry about the F-bomb, man. Number one, I wanted to say it too. You just said it for both of us. That's okay. Second of all, the name of the show is Talkin' Smack, not Praying Rosaries. So here we are. We're talking smack. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of it. Monday, 7 o'clock, live stream again on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. It'll be uploaded to the podcast platforms very shortly thereafter. Thanks for being with us on Talkin' Smack. See you next time. See you, Jack.